Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football after a whirlwind of the last 72 hours. Five-star wide receiver Chris Henry Jr. going to be sticking with Ohio State. Now, ton of different angles to dive into. Like, what's this mean for Ryan Day and Ohio State? And I ain't just talking about the kind of football player you're getting. I don't think I'm breaking any news to the Oregon fans that are listening to this. I ain't breaking any news to the Ohio State fans that are listening to this. You're getting a stud, and you're getting a guy that's going to have a really good chance to contribute immediately in 2026. The bigger storyline for Ohio State is that there were a lot of national media analysts that were questioning what Ohio State was going to look like, specifically on the recruiting trail, specifically recruiting these wide receivers without Brian Hartline. Some of those questions get answered with Ryan Day getting this one across the finish line. I'll say this, as much as it is a conversation, like, well, what is Ohio State going to look like on the trail without Brian Hartline? It's a little disrespectful to Ryan Day, man. Like, Ryan Day is one of the best head football coaches in the country. I'll say this. My bigger question marks are, what does Brian Hartline look like without Ryan Day, as opposed to what does Ryan Day look like without Brian Hartline? At least that's my read on the situation. From a PR standpoint, this one's really big for Ohio State. From an Oregon lens, I just want to say this real quick. And I know the Oregon fans, this one stings because there was a reason that a lot of crystal balls were favoring Oregon 24 hours ago. Golf clap to Dan Lanning, man. You're going to sign the number 2 class in the country. More importantly than that, you didn't lose a single commitment. Why is that so important? What's special about that? Because you lost both of your coordinators to head coaching jobs. You lost Will Stein to Kentucky. You lost Tosh Lupoy to Cal. You still don't lose commitments. That speaks to what Dan Lanning does as a head coach on the trail. That's one of the benefits of having a dog on the recruiting trail in Dan Lanning, right? We'll start with Ohio State. We'll go to Oregon because I'll say this. You feel like Oregon's going to be okay in the wide receiver room, and I'll tell you why. Before we get into it, as always, Ohio State fans, Oregon fans, USC fans, I'm sure are checking this one out too. Y'all let it rip in the comments section. Appreciate you guys. I can't tell you how much fun it's been covering this cycle on the recruiting trail. And you best believe the USC fans, Oregon fans, and Ohio State fans that are checking this one out, this ain't going to be the last battle between these 3 programs on the recruiting trail over the next couple of years. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, my take on Chris Henry Jr., it's one of those, like, God don't make many of them. This guy, the size and physicality he has, combined with the coordination and ball skills, and then a little bit of polish as a route runner. Normally when you see these wide receivers, they're just big bodies that can work vertically and use some of that physicality. I think there's a little bit more to Chris Henry Jr. He's not only just a 6'5", 210-pound physical freak wide receiver. There's some route running there that I think the Ohio State fans are going to figure out. From an Oregon perspective, you look at it and say, Jalen Lott's coming in. Messiah Hampton's coming in. Don't forget about Gatlin Bear as well. You already have the Corey Moore, who's only going to be going into year 2. Jeremiah McClellan going into year 3 next year. He seems to be coming on as of late. It stings because I think Chris Henry Jr. was a kind of wide receiver, a skill set in that wide receiver room that maybe Oregon lacked a little bit. Oregon's got some route running. They got some playmaking. They got a lot of speed. They didn't really have that big body, specifically in the red zone, that you can just throw one up to, and more times than not, it's going to come down with the catch, right? That part stings. But in terms of the wide receiver talent that is coming in, I think you feel pretty good. And I guess the way to wrap this one up is that I'm interested to see the recruiting battles that play out between Oregon and Ohio State, specifically for these elite caliber wide receivers, right? What's the impact of what's the impact of not having Brian Hartline at Ohio State? Like, we're going to figure that out. Now, you look at Caden Dixon Wyatt flipping to USC. It sounded like USC that was in the works before the flip commitment on Tuesday morning, right? my general take is that we're going to see a lot of recruiting battles between these programs, specifically for these wide receivers. And maybe it gets a little bit more evenly dispersed. Over the last couple of years, really the last half a decade, most of these elite wide receivers were winding up in Columbus, Ohio. Do the wide receiver talent get a little bit more dispersed with Brian Hartline not with this program? That's what we're going to find out. But if you're an Ohio State fan, you're looking at this and saying, hey, there's a lot of people that assume that Ohio State ain't going to roll on the recruiting trail when it comes to wide receivers. I don't think that's a accurate depiction of what's going to happen. Ohio State's still going to get theirs at the wide receiver position. You make no mistake about it. And I'll say this with Ryan Day too, man. The coaching hires he's made, it's part of what makes him an elite head football coach, right? You look at, we're going to have to replace Brian Hartline, and those are going to be some big shoes to fill. Ohio State's done a really good job hiring a staff around Ryan Day, and wouldn't be surprised if they bring in a big name to replace Brian Hartline. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.